Hey YouTube, it's Master Beetle here, and I know the Zoo Booster ain't out in English yet, but I couldn't wait, man. I needed to get a deck profile out for y'all. I need y'all to know what to play and when to play it. So this is what I've been testing on Area. This is my little deck analysis of Darkface Gredora, pre-English release of the Awakening Zoo set. This is what I've been playing. This is what's been working for me so far. Change to your repertoire or to your liking. This is just what I've been using and what seems to be working and the most consistent in my opinion. So you can just use this as like a basis for your Gredora deck if you need to, if you really don't know where to go with Gredora. Okay, starting with the Grade 3 lineup. For the Grade 3 lineup, you obviously run 4 Gredora, I run 2 Alicides, and I run 1 tech copy of Intimidating Mutant Darkface. Now, I like the tech copy of Intimidating Mutant Darkface in this solely for he is a good ride target for late game. Late in the game, when your opponent is trying to kill you, he's a very good ride target because Gredora and some other key cards in this deck stack up soul, so you could have a good 6 to 8 card soul by the time in the late game. You ride Darkface. A good combo that I'd like to do is countercharge with Gredora and flip 1 down for my opponent. Ride Darkface, stride. My opponent has 2 units on board, say in the front row, stride into Otirandus, make it so they can't call. Giga the 2 units in the front row, and they're probably still going to be there at the end of their turn, so it's a net 2. And since you have to discard 1 for Otirandus, it's essentially a +1. So it's a really good little combo that you could do there, and then like you could just be on him. He's like really good to be on during your GB8 turns where they can't intercept and you could just stun the front row. So he's really good to ride target for late game. I usually like to save him in my hand. It usually ensures me the win in most situations. And then you run 2 Darkface Alicides. Darkface Alicides is good for his GB2. He's a 21k beater and your opponent can't intercept. And I like his Soul Blast 1, Counter Blast 1 on ride and rearguard skill to rest and stun a column. That's really good if you're getting rushed or if you really need to peg down a certain column to make sure your opponent can't do anything on their turn. He's really good for that too. So that's why I run him at 2 copies. Would like to run more, but I had to make room in the Grade 3 and Grade 2 lineup so that I could make room I had to cut some things in the Grade 2 and Grade 3 lineup so I can make room in the Grade 1 lineup. So that's why we're running 7 Grade 3s. It works out for me. 7. You really don't need any more than 7. You see all your Stride Fodders, your Grade 3s, and everything in this deck just because of the sheer amount of draw power. Anyways, on to the Grade 2s. Now for the Grade 2s, you run 4 Dangerous Horn, 3 Bolg Wasp, and 3 Vulgar Blister. You run Dangerous Horn because he's a 10k, and also because of he's a 16k beater on rearguard circle. Now obviously his skill is you have to reveal, or you have to have a Darkface Vanguard. Most of the time you will, because all your Grade 3s are Darkface, so that usually doesn't matter. And obviously his rearguard skill is if your opponent has one or less standing units, he gains +6k. So he's a 16k beater by himself. It's really good, and that's why I run 4. Then I run a Tech 3 of Bolg Wasp. Now at first I really didn't like this card, but I kind of use him to counter my opponent trying to counter me. Let's say my opponent gets a stand trigger, or they're trying to keep a couple units standing to try and play around my Overwhelm's Dark Device GB3 skill, or trying to minus my draws that I would get off of their turn. So you call Bolg Wasp, his skill is GB1, rest on Dark Device, rest all the units on my opponent's field, gains +2k, and if my opponent has 2 face down damage, gains +5k. So he's a 16k beater for the turn. He's actually a lot better than I thought he was. He does put it in work, just for the simple fact he's an extra 16k beater, even if it's for the turn only, but then you could just intercept him off to call another one. So he's really good at a tech copy of 3. Usually you don't need more. You don't need more than 3, you usually see them. And also your starter also helps if your opponent's trying to keep their units standing. Another guy that helps against that dilemma is Vulgar Blister. Now I really love Vulgar Blister because Vulgar Blister helps if your opponent is trying to rush you. I really like that this deck can counteract being rushed. Because even though he's only a 7k grade 2, he's good in the deck. You run 3 of them. I wouldn't run more than 3 because obviously you don't want to ride him. You'd rather ride Bolg Wasp or obviously Dangerous Horn as your ride target for grade 2. But his skill on rearguard is that during your opponent's stand phase, units in the same column as this unit cannot stand. Yes, he gets around resist because it's everything. It's not choosing. Everything in that column cannot stand. So he's really good for that. It's essentially a stun in the column for free, which is probably why they made him a 7k. Granted, I think if they made him an 8k, it wouldn't be that bad. I just didn't like the fact that they made him a 7k, but you know, beggars can't be choosers. He's a really good card. I don't know why you wouldn't run him. His also rearguard continuous skill is that he could pay the cost. You could use him to pay the cost for stride for a G unit with the Dark Device ability. So obviously you could stride into Overwhelm with it. You don't really run anything else that has Dark Device, so you could just stride into Overwhelm with it. If you really need, if you don't have the grade 3 or Stride Fighter in hand, he's good for that too. But usually when you plop him down, he counteracts the rush, and your opponent will just Vanguard swing at him, and you're just like, yeah, sure. You either have another one in hand, or it really doesn't matter, because you just plop him down and counteract your opponent's early game rush. So that's why I like him in the deck at 3. And now we're gonna go on to the grade 1s. Now for the grade 1s, we're running we're running obviously 4 Stride Fodder, little Dorcas, obviously search for your Gredora, search for your Alicides, search for any of your grade 3s. That's the utility I like of this deck, is that since all your grade 3s are Darkface, you're really not missing out on any of your skills if you misride. Or like you could search for any of your grade 3s since they all have Darkface in the name. And now 4 of the new PG Black Weevil. The only thing is that he can only guard Darkface units, which isn't bad because all your grade 3s are Darkface, but you can't really PG grade 2 or grade 1, which kind of sucks, but it is what it is. If you get rushed that badly and you couldn't counteract it, it just happens. Anyway, I like to run him because he's essentially he's like the countercharge PG but better, because he has an act skill in the drop zone that bind 2 of it face up to either countercharge 1, soul charge 1. You could either countercharge 1 or soul charge 1, and you get to draw a card. So I like him for that, because he's essentially a countercharge and draw. That's usually what you use him for, because you counterblast in this deck a lot, because you're using 2 CB to 3 CB each turn. You counterblast in this deck a lot, so you need the countercharge, and I like him because most of the time you really need it's draw. There's no reason why you wouldn't want the draw. So he's good for that. That's why I run it at 4. And now for the rest of the grade 1s, we got 3-3-2 split. Now, I'm running 3 Twilight Matter. I noticed that a lot of the deck lists in Japan for Gredora aren't running Twilight Matter. They'd rather run Bad Luck. Now, I understand why they're running Bad Luck. They're running Bad Luck because of the early game rush. If they get rushed early game, they pop down a Bad Luck to net some advantage. That's all fine and dandy. But Twilight Matter is just too good of a card not to run. I run him at 3 for his ability because he's like a Transit Dragon, except he's a 10k booster. So obviously, like, you know, after he boosts Dark Device, he's a 10k booster, shove it in Soul and draw. He feeds Soul and he gets you a card. Really good. I'd run it. I run it at 3 just because I'm running 16 1s, just to show you how much like that's how tight the grade 1 lineup is. Okay, so I'm running 3 Bad Luck. At first, I didn't like Bad Luck because it's Soul Blast, but it really doesn't hinder you at all because you soul charge so much in this deck. Bad Luck doesn't hinder you at all. And I just noticed that Bad Luck's a girl. Those are titties. I just noticed that. Anyway, its skill on rearguard is Soul Blast 1. If your opponent has 3 rested units, draw a card. And yes, your Vanguard counts as a unit, so if they have 2 units at rest, 2 rearguards at rest, and a Vanguard, you get the draw. Just to let you know, if you didn't know. And then I run the Tech 2 Brillian Blister. Now this is a meta call personally. I run 2 Brillian Blisters because Overlords, Zesenberg, Ace, stop their restands is really good. It's really good to neg them of their restand because it essentially it ruins their whole stride turn. So that's really good. And then obviously next stage, Gear Next, it stops Gear Next, and any other D-Police, Laurel, can stop Laurel. they're going to attack a rear guard, just plop down a Brillian Blister so that their Vanguard can't stand. It's really good. That's why I run them at 2. Wish I could run more, but I only have space for 2 because I'm running 16 grade 1s. So that's why I took out space on the grade 3 and grade 2 lineup, because Brillian Blister is really just a meta call because there's so much restand in the meta, not including Luard with the Blaster restander. Just so much restand in the meta that it's really a meta call. Anyways, going on to the grade 0s. Now our starter, we're using I forget this dude's name. I don't remember what his name is, but he's a forerunner. In all honesty, he's the best starter for Mega Colony in general right now. I notice other people are trying using Rosenberg or Crime Bug. No, don't. He's the best starter you have. He's good because first off, he enables your Overwhelm plays by resting everything at the beginning of your ride phase. For his counterblast put into soul skill, he nets you a card. That's good too. And also, what I like to do with this guy is that he helps you get out of Gravelock. Because it's the beginning of the ride phase. So at the beginning of the ride phase, before you ride, that's the beginning of the ride phase. So let's say I'm grade locked at 2, or I'm grade locked at 2, grade locked at 1. Shove him into the soul. Try my luck. Did I get it? Yes. Top deck. There you go. I can't tell you how many times, like, in playtesting, this guy helped me get out of grade lock. Or, like, he mitigates grade lock if you do have the G assist. But he's just really good for that reason. So that's why I run him on my starter. I wouldn't run him more than 1 just because he counts the counterblast. And counterblast is just still so heavy in this deck. Because you're using, like I said, with him, you're using 3 CB a turn. But most of the time with Gredora Stride Skill and then Overwhelm, you're using 2 CB a turn. So 2 to 3 CB a turn. Like, the deck is very counterblast heavy, but like you could mitigate it with your countercharge. So that's why you wouldn't run more than 1 starter. Anyways, on to the triggers. Now for the triggers, I'm running 4 of the Darkface crit Bomb Scissor. Obviously, crit skill, shove it into the soul when your Vanguard attacks, +5 and draw. Really good. You wouldn't run it. There's no reason you wouldn't run it. And then I'm playing 4 of the new Machining crit. Now this guy's really good. He's especially good in the Darkface deck. For his rearguard skill of GB1, shove it back into the deck and shuffle to stun a unit. Any unit. He's so good. Just cause, like, I like to hoard these guys in my hand and draw, low deck, and shove them back in deck, plop down a field to GB8, I'm guaranteed to get crits. So that's why I like him in the deck. He's good at 4. You wouldn't play him in... You'd play him in all your Mega Colony decks. There's no reason you wouldn't play him. So, now, I was debating this slot right here, the stand trigger. I was debating running the other guy that was released in the set to shove into the soul and countercharge, but I realized Makeup Widow essentially does the same thing and it gets you a stun, which I really like. So that's why I'm running Makeup Widow instead. Her skill is obviously Rearguard, Dark Device, GB1, shove into the soul, and at the end of each turn, you may pay the cost, so anybody's turn, which is really good. Countercharge 1 and choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less units and stun it, which I really like in the deck. It's, again, countercharge engine, and then obviously your 4 of Machining Snowing, your countercharge, your either countercharge or soul charge heal. Obviously, you'd play this just to help you mitigate the fact that you're counterblasting 3 to 2 cards a turn. It's really good. There's no reason you wouldn't play it. Okay, that's it for triggers. Let me just go on to the strides. Yeah, we're going on to strides now. Now for the strides, I'm playing 4 Overwhelm, 2 Lawless Mutant Deity Otirandus, 2 Suppression Mutant Deity Otirandus, and 1 Air Element Sebreeze. Now, most people are like, play 3 copies of Overwhelm. No, you play 4 copies of Overwhelm. Overwhelm is the best card in your deck. You have to play 4 copies of this card. For the simple fact that it's Counterblast 1. Its skill is obviously Counterblast 1, flip anything, and draw for each of your opponent's rested rear guards. And then if my opponent has 1 or less rested rear guards, she gains +1 critical and +1 drive. Yes, she can gain quad drive and a crit on your first turn. It is very good because if they only have 1 unit rested, 1 rearguard rested, you draw a card, and then you're drive checking 4, which essentially nets you 5 cards that turn. Which is basically from your normal drive check. Yeah, and it's a +2 from your normal drive check, because you're drive checking 3, but you net yourself 2 more cards, the extra check and the draw. So it's a +2 off of that, and then if your opponent rushes you and they have like 3 or 4, it can go up to a +3 to a +4 to a +5 for that turn. And she only gets better with time. Her continuous Vanguard GB3 skill is Dark Device. All my units gain +2k for each one of my opponent's face down damage. That is really good for the Gredora deck, just because of Gredora's GB1 skill of flipping my opponent's damage so I can countercharge. It's really good for the Gredora deck. It's like they have 4 face down damage, or like they just put it face down themselves for their own skills. +8 to everything. If they're at 5 damage and it's all face down, +10, +6, +4. It's really good to pressure my opponent while like I'm getting resources and pressuring them, and they're losing resources because they have to guard these huge attacks. So it's really good. She only gets better with time. I would not run less than 4 copies in any Gredora deck. Okay, and now we're getting on to your win con against rearguard reliant decks. Now, I say this as I play 2 copies personally because I only have 2, and I'm not going to get a 3rd one just because how expensive it is right now. Lawless Mutant Deity, Otirandus. I've never gone into him more than 2 times to win a game. His skill is GB2, Counter Blast 2, and ditch a card. Your opponent cannot call cards to rearguard during their turn. So that's really good. It's been good since the Genius Strategy set. The thing that makes it better now, that mitigates its cost, is the GB1 of Gredora. Now, with Gredora's GB1, you're essentially only counterblasting 1 for Otirandus skill, which goes into the fact that I'm saying you're counterblasting 2 to 3 each turn, because you don't have to use your stride skill if you're using Otirandus' skill. So, and the ditch card, you have your grade 1s draw you cards. So, essentially you can mitigate that with your grade 1 Twilight Matter or Bad Luck, if they have rear guards on board. So you can mitigate that that discard with Bad Luck, with Twilight Matter or Bad Luck. And usually on your Otirandus turn, if you're against a Granblue deck or a Pale Moon deck or a Royal Paladin deck that is rearguard reliant, them not having any rearguards at all hurts them a lot. So, and the fact that you're pressuring them at the same time when they can't call any rearguards for 2 turns is going to destroy their hand, because they're only netting 3 cards from drive checks. Because if they're rearguard reliant, they don't have any. You only play this if they don't have any strides that's Vanguard centric. If they have rearguard centric strides, like Nubaton would be a bad example. If they have rearguard reliant strides, like let's say against Royal Paladin, all of Royal Paladin's strides are basically rearguard reliant, because you need a rearguard to restand. No, you need a rearguard for Alfred. They could go into Gancelot, but that's only netting them 1 extra card. You're most likely peaching that attack anyway. And then against Neonectar, it just destroys Neonectar if they didn't have anything on board already. Because, like, if you go into Otirandus and then call a Alicides, use Alicides' skill to stun a column, or if you call a Vulgar Blister, they can't stand that column. It just hurts them so much that's what wins you the match, is that you restricting them from being able to play their deck the way it's supposed to be played. Like Granblue, or Pale Moon, or Royals, or I can't think of anything else, but basically you only stride into Otirandus against rearguard reliant decks. Now you might be tempted to stride into Otirandus against Chaos Breaker or Overlord if you don't have any rearguards. Don't. You lose that matchup. You lose because you're only they can lock down your board, and they can pop your board. And Chaos doesn't need a Vanguard centric because it's control. So if Chaos is being controlled, they'll just control you right back. and that's how you lose the Chaos matchup, because they win the late game. You have to rush them early game. And then for the Overlord matchup, essentially you have to do the same thing. You have to rush them early game, and you can't really go into Otirandus, because Otirandus is like a mid to late game card. I wouldn't do it because it'll lose you the matchup. You just want to go into Overwhelm, rush them as hard as you can, and then Otirandus if you get that far. And then obviously one Sebreeze, I don't really go into it. I don't think I've had a situation where I needed to go into it, but obviously you run one Sebreeze because it's a G deck, and there's room in the G zone, so there's really no reason not to run Sebreeze. Yeah, obviously you run I run two GB8s because our GB8 out of the GB8 Fighters Collection booster, it was one of the weaker ones. It's still a good GB8 considering that they lose all their auto abilities and that they can't intercept. Still a good GB8 for that fact alone, but it only gains plus 5k for each one of my opponent's rested units, which makes it one of the weaker ones depending on how many units they have on board. Most of the time my opponent will only have like 2 to 3, but that's usually what it needs. Like the first GB8 is going to pressure them, take away their hand. If they survive it by a miracle, then I'll just go into the second one to clean house. So that's why you run 2 GB8s, because they can survive the first one, but they have a very low chance of surviving the second one. Anyway, this is our final stride in the G zone. Is Ultimate Stride card. Zoa. Now you run one Zoa. Now, an interesting thing that I found out about Ultimate Stride is that for Ultimate Stride, if you have 3 or more face up in your G zone, you only have to. The only cost for Ultimate Striding is discarding a copy of your Vanguard. Now this doesn't restrict you to being at grade 3 Vanguard. It only needs to discard a copy of your Vanguard. So if somebody Drachmas you and you survive Drachma and say you're at a grade 1 or grade 2 Vanguard, you could respond if it's the only play you could possibly make, respond with your own GR, Zoa, by only discarding a copy of your Vanguard, which is really good. I like that. That's really good. It's a really good counter to Drachma. So that's a really good little thing you could do to try and win the Kagero matchup if they Drachma you, or any Dragon Empire matchup. Its skill is auto. Counterblast 2, when it's placed on Vanguard, draw a card and choose a card from your hand, call it to rearguard. Until the end of the turn, it gets continuous. It can't be chosen by card effects, and its power is constantly Quintet 9, and it gets auto rearguard. When this unit deals damage to my opponent's Vanguard, they lose the game. So basically what I like about Zoa is that it's PG or bust most of the time. The only deck that I could really think of that could probably, 2 decks actually, that could probably guard this Quintet 9 is Blade Wings or Gear Chronicle with that one GR that gives plus 5 for each face-up G unit. So it depends on what stage they are in the game for Gear Chronicle, but I think Blade Wings could definitely stop it, just because Sullivan gives 10k shield to everything. That's really broken. But I usually go into this card. I like it. I run it one of in the deck. Most people think it's bad. It is not a bad card at all. It is a solid card, because it automatically wins you the game if you know for a fact your opponent doesn't have a PG in hand and they can't guard it. It wins you the game no matter what damage they're at. If you know for a fact their opponent doesn't have a PG, or you've seen most of their PGs already, so if you're ballsy and take a little bit of a gamble, but like you probably know there's a good chance they don't have a PG, just stride into Zoa for the win. I like it out of all the other ZRs right now, besides Dust, or because Dust is broken, but because it's basically I win. It's a legit I win card. I think it's better in the situation that your opponent doesn't have a PG. It's better than Megiddo, and it's better than Drachma, because depending on how many cards they have in hand, they could survive a Megiddo or Drachma turn easily. But like Zoa, Quintet 9, no PG, good luck. You most likely cannot guard this attack. So that's why you run one copy, or at least I run one copy of Zoa. If you can't afford Zoas, I'll have some other options at the end of the deck profile, or deck analysis that is, for the G-Zone, anything else that you guys might be interested in playing that I don't play personally, but you might be interested, so I have it down as tech options at the end. And we're going to go on to G-Guardians now. We're close to the end, people. We're almost there. I know this is kind of long, but I just want to kind of explain my tech choices in the deck and why I play what I play. I didn't want to just give you the deck profile and just have people be like, I don't know, guy, this seems kind of weird. Anyway, now for the G-Guardians, I know this is kind of weird, but you play 6 G-Guardians because there's really not that much to play in Mega Colony as for G units, any good G units that I would play. So like what I do is like I'm just running 6 G Guardians. Now you run 2 Morphison. I love Morphison. Morphison is a godsend to Mega Colony. Like we needed this. We needed this so bad. A G Guardian deck is an easy 10k. It's so good. Because when it's plopped on the guard circle. Excuse me. If the number of my opponent's units at standing is 2 or less against plus 10k, so easy to achieve. It is so easy to achieve. I love it so much. It's such a good G Guardian. I'm so glad we got it. I run it at 2 copies. You could run it at 3, take out a Colburn, but it's just me. I run it at 2. I don't think I'd run it more at 2. And then 2 Mutant Deity Fortification Gryfort. Now, I used to run only 1 Gryfort, but I run 2 Gryfort for the Neonectar matchup. Because Neonectar, even though you can lock down their columns, you can stun their units, they could just, for the stunned units, they could just call over. Most of the time you win the Neonectar matchup, but if they try to aggro you early, then they just make such insane column numbers, and they have to attack with their Vanguard first for the most of the time. Gryfort just says no, rest that back row. That's probably boosting for 30k. and since most of the time they have a full field, or 4 units, you're going to get the plus 5k or plus 10k you might get. So that's why I run them at 2. Just for decks that aggro and like have insane boosters, it's good to just rest them. This is essentially our Denial Griffin, but I think he's better than Denial Griffin just because I don't have to have a certain type of Vanguard. I mean, no, not Denial Griffin. I misspoke. Defeat Flare. This is our Defeat Flare for Megas. I don't think it's better than Defeat Flare as a card, but I think it's just better in situations just because it's a counterblast, and I don't need to have an Overlord Vanguard and 2 Flame Dragons to put back from the drop. Not that 2 Flame Dragon Grade 3s. Not that that's hard, but I'm just saying I like it because you can use it better in the situation. You don't have to have certain checks and balances you have to check off. It's just place. You don't even have to have a certain Vanguard. And I play 1 7 stars Mutant Deity Relish Lady. Now I play 1 Relish Lady. I used to play 2, but it's better at 1 because of you're gonna always get her counter charge skill and draw and soul charge. You're always gonna get it off. No one, because your opponent doesn't want to neg attacks. They'd rather have you get the draw and counter charge, and I've had it save my ass so many times where I've drew into a shield or I drew into a PG, helped me survive that turn. Relish Lady's skill is GB1, flip a G Guardian. When your opponent's Vanguard attacks, yeah, so you have to guard it against their Vanguard, which sucks because it doesn't gain any power, but your opponent chooses can choose up to 2 of his or her rear guards and rest them. If they didn't choose to, I draw a card and countercharge and soul charge. So like basically I'm just G-guarding to countercharge, draw, and soul charge, which is really good. It's another way to get countercharge in this deck since you're countercharging 2 to 3 cards each turn. It's really good. I like it. So I run it at 1. I wouldn't run it at more than 1. Just because, again, it's just 26k shield. So usually I like to do a combo of G-guarding with Relish Lady and then G-guarding, or G-guarding with Gryfort first and then G-guarding with Relish Lady just to make sure my opponent doesn't get cheeky and rests anything. So it's really good. And then we have Mix Element Colburn. I tech copy 1 Mix Element Colburn just because of the things that are in our meta right now. Overlord, big hands. Battle Sisters, big hands. Blade Wings can generate big hands. Chaos, big hands. Messiah, big hands. So what Colburn does is when it's placed on G-Guardian that your opponent's Vanguard attacks, it gets plus discard 1 and it gets +5 shield until the end of that battle for every 2 cards in your opponent's hand. So important fact is that only a guard Vanguard attacks, but it can be better than Screw in certain points just because it's gonna gain +5 for every 2 cards in hand. So say if they have an 8-card hand, and +5 for every 2, that's let's see here, yeah, that's 20k shield on there. So it could be 46 by itself. So it's good at blocking insane Vanguard attacks. So that's why I run them at 1. It's just a meta call personally. You could run anything else. You could run a 3rd Amorphosin, another G unit. This is just what I run. We're almost at the end, fellas. So we're going to go for tech options for the main deck. Now what they're doing over in Japan, what's been topping over in Japan is that they've been playing 2 Violent Vespers as grade 3s. Now what Violent Vesper is, he's a BTO4 card from back in the day. And his skill is when placed on a Vanguard or Rear Guard, reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Mega Con, and call it to Rear Guard. So basically, what they do is that they play Violent Vesper to generate field and rush their opponent early. Now it's a good scenario and it's a good combo, but I don't like it just for the simple fact that it can get a trigger off the top, a PG, a heal. And it's 9k. It's a 9k grade 3. Once it's on the field, there's really few ways to get rid of it. It's suboptimal from your key attackers in the deck, and I don't want to ride this card. Like I run 5 ride targets for the grade 3 just because I don't want to misride. I don't want to ride Violent Vesper because if you ride a 9k grade 3, you will get punished so hard. Like you will get punished. That's why personally I don't run a Violent Vesper. You could if you want to be more aggressive in your Gredora deck. I just don't do it myself. So you could run 1 to 2 copies of it. I wouldn't run more than 2 because, like I said, you don't want to ride this guy. You will get aggroed back so hard. It's just not optimal in my opinion. And then for the grade 2 lineup, you can run 3 to 4 copies of Punish Tag. Now, I noticed over in Japan that they don't play Vulgar Blister. They play Punish Tag. So, if you don't like Vulgar Blister for the simple fact that he's a 7k grade 2, you could supplement that for Punish Tag. You'll always have a Darkface Vanguard. He's a Giga and draw, so he'll either force your opponent to call over, or you're going to net yourself a draw. A key thing for his ability, though, is it's not a you may draw, it's that you have to draw. So, just a thing to remember, you have to draw off of his skill if you're on low cards in deck. And then for the grid 1 lineup, we have 3 to 4 Vulcan Lafertes. Like I said, this deck counterblasts a lot. Counterblast isn't really that, but we countercharge a lot too. So it's not really that bad. But you don't run you don't run Vulcan Laferte for his countercharge skill. You run Vulcan Laferte because of his continuous regard skill. If you have a Vanguard with Darkface in his name, he can't be chosen by effects of your opponent's cards, and all your opponent's opponent's units in the same column as this unit cannot intercept. So basically, when I used to play Vulcan Laferte, I used to like making a Vulcan Laferte and Vulgar Blister column, so they can't stand anything in that column, and they can't intercept with that either. So it's really good for that. It's really good. Like I said, if you feel like you're having countercharge problems, you could play him for the countercharge, but he's just good as basically a resist unit and making sure your opponent doesn't just intercept away your stuns, because you can't consistently make sure they can't intercept when you stun them now, which doesn't really matter in all honesty. If they intercept with it, it's a neg because they're gonna have to call another unit from hand. So that's it for the tech options in the main deck. Now for the Stride deck, tech options is, like I said, if you don't want to run Sebreeze or you don't have the money to run Zoa, you can run 2 to 3 copies of Force Spear Mutant Deity Stun Beetle. Now, what Stun Beetle does, he's still a good card. I don't run him personally because the G Zone, I'd rather run the G Guardians, and yeah, I'd rather run just the G Guardians in all honesty. I don't think, because you have Zoa, so like why would I run it right this guy if I could just use Zoa to win the game? But like you can play this if you don't have Zoa if you don't have the money to buy Zoas. So you can just run him at 2 to 3 copies. He'll always like net guard out of your hand because obviously they don't want to. His skill is GB2, Counterblast 2, flip a copy of him when he hits, stun their Vanguard, and they can't ride during the next ride phase. So he's really good for that. Usually after that turn, you'll win the game in the next turn or the next following turns. So if he hits, of course. If anything else, he's just he gets guard out of your opponent's hands. It's good for that, I guess. I don't run it because there's just better things to go into. And then you have Anguish Sword. Now Anguish Sword is basically a worse Overwhelm. For his skill is Dark Device. CB1, choose up to your units to the same number of your opponent's units at rest, or rearguards at rest, and they gain 4k, and if 3 or more were chosen, countercharge one and draw. You could run him over Sebreeze, or you could run him over a third Overwhelm or a Zoa. I personally don't run him just because I'd rather the Sebreeze and G Guardians. But you can, and I honestly don't. I never went into a situation when I did try him out that I needed to go into him for the Gredora deck. You just go into Overwhelm because Overwhelm is better. So there's not really a situation that I found that I'd go into him. People said, oh no, you go into him when you don't want to deck out on Overwhelm turns. I'm like, I'll just draw, call my Treehoppers, recycle them back into the deck, and then check crits. Essentially, I'm not going to deck out. I'll win before I deck out. Like, I've never decked out in my playtesting with Gredora. I usually win when I'm close to deck out, but I've never decked out. So, you could play 1 copy of Anguish Sword. You really don't need more than 1 copy. If you do play Anguish Sword, I've never really found a reason to go into him, but it's a tech option. Anyway, guys, this is the end of this video. I know it's a long one. I just wanted to get out all my thoughts and feelings on the Gredora deck to get you guys ready when it comes out in English. I am excited. I know you're excited too. There's going to be more videos for Mega Colony. I'm going to do one for machinings as well because I feel like people don't know how to build machinings and they don't understand what they need, what the deck needs. So I'm going to do one for machinings as well. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe down below. Check out my Discord, the Crime Syndicate. Join the Bug Army. You know, everything Mega Colony. Deck tips, deck lists, spoilers, Mega Colony spoilers, spoilers in general. And just like, you know, if you love bugs, you can talk to me there. You can play with a couple of guys there that love bugs too. So, alright. This is Master Beetle, man. Peace.